taught me about entrepreneurship and what it was like to do something that you love. And I thought like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I didn't know that I could do this. So fate had it that I was
Hello, Empower Nation. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. I'm your host, Angela Duncan. Today's episode is on fire. Literally, I get to interview Kate Erickson Dumas with EO Fire. She is the heartbeat behind EO Fire. She's going to talk about her journey before podcasting, how they got launched in podcasting, some amazing tips for podcast hosts and for guests, talking about knowing your numbers, which I believe is so important, their move to Puerto Rico, and the future of EO Fire, Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast. Check out this episode. Hi, Kate. Welcome so much to Empower Her Money podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for saying yes. I know you've got a super busy schedule, but before we get into the amazing things that you're doing today, I'd love for you to kind of start off with your story, how you got to what you're doing today.
Yes. So I grew up very corporate background, corporate minded. I went to college, got a degree, thought that whatever my degree was in was what my career was going to be, and that I would climb the corporate ladder and hopefully someday end up as a manager making a lot of money. And quickly realized that corporate America was not for me. But the issue there was that I didn't know that there was anything different. So I thought that everybody just didn't really like their job, but they did it anyways to pay bills and earn money. So I kind of, stayed in the position that I was in a job that I didn't like, and then luckily met a few people who were doing things on their own terms and kind of taught me about entrepreneurship and what it was like to do something that you love. And I thought like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I didn't know that I could do this. So fate had it that I was supposed to get a promotion at the job that I was working, the company that I was working at. And that promotion fell through, which was completely heartbreaking for me because I was, it was a step up. For me, that was what took that time in my life to get a promotion, to get a raise, to have a better job title, to work in a bigger office, all of these things. And so that was pretty heartbreaking for me. But what it did was kind of shook up my world in a way that I was like, okay, that's it. I can't any longer wait for somebody else to give me what it is that I want. I need to woman up and go get that for myself. And that's going to be based on the actions and the things that I'm doing, not what somebody else can give to me. So I quit that job. I started my first company, I tried to anyways. And that kind of led me on this journey of entrepreneurship. That business did not work. I ended up going back to get a job in advertising and marketing. But what was so different about that advertising and marketing position for me is that I could see a path where that could help me get to maybe another business or another thing in entrepreneurship. So it was kind of like I viewed it as a stepping stone rather than, oh, I'm going back to corporate America. Like I'm ashamed of this or anything like that. I didn't feel that way. I stayed at that company for about a year and a half. And at the time, I was dating John Lee Dumas, and he decided to quit his job and launch a podcast and asked me to quit my job and join the team after that had kind of taken off. So I ended up leaving that company to join John on the team. And we've been working together for 10 years now, 10 years this year.
Yeah. So I want to talk first about your first experience in entrepreneurship. I know you said it didn't work out for you. What are some things that you learned from that experience?
I mean, really big for me is I was always the type of employee that I did really well just receiving instruction and going and implementing something. So it was very easy for me to be successful by having someone else tell me what to do and going and doing that thing. Like I'll figure it out. I didn't really need a lot. I just needed you to tell me what the goal was and I'd figure out how to do it. And it turns out when you're running your own business, nobody's there to tell you what those things are. You really have to like take the type of initiative that I honestly I'd never learned how to do that. yes, Google existed, and yes, you could go and research like how do I start a business or what do I do next, but as we all know as entrepreneurs, it's not really that simple. So one of my biggest lessons was, okay, if I'm going to make this work, like I really need to shift my mindset in so much bigger of a way than I had anticipated, because I would find myself going out and being, really inspired and motivated for the day, and then I'd get somewhere and I'd be like, okay, I want to take action. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And
Mhm.
so, kind of like stepping into this new realm of, okay, not only do you have to figure the thing, you have to figure out what the actual thing is first. So, that was really tough for me.
Yeah, and I can understand that too because they talk about the rainmaker, right? Is usually like the CEO of a company. And I've
Mm,
always said my skill set is putting out the buckets to catch the rain and determining what to do with it. So I wasn't great at making it rain, but once it did, like I could execute and figure it out. So I definitely can understand, that point of view too, but that you recognize that and that's your skill set. So
mm.
that's awesome too. So you went back to work for a company and similar what your business was. Um, but you obviously started working now with the podcasting world, and you guys were very early on in podcasting. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what you were seeing?
Yeah, so when John started the podcast, I really didn't know too much about podcasting. He was so sure that this is what he was meant to do, and he was so positive that he could make this impact and create something out of this. And I was kind of sitting there like, I don't really get this. I don't know how you're going to make this work. I really didn't understand a lot of it, but knowing John the way that I did, I knew that if he was like set his mind to something that he was going to make it happen. And so it was a really unique and special journey for us being a couple. For me to watch him navigate this space and figure these things out, and that taught me so much about just being an entrepreneur. Like the steps that he was taking, the time that he was putting into this, the people that he was trying to make connections with, like how he was piecing this all together. I was kind of, watching from the sidelines while I was at my job, and so when I quit that job and joined him on the team, a huge lesson for me and something that I learned, just about the podcasting space in general and really entrepreneurship as like a bigger umbrella is teams and people work really well together when they have different skill sets.
Mhm.
And it might sound obvious, but I guess I had never really thought about it before. So when John asked me to join the team, I thought, well, I don't want to just come on and be like an admin. I don't want to manage your calendar for you. I don't want to schedule interviews for you. So we really need to figure out what this is going to be, because I don't want to leave my job, to do that. And so finding that we had different skill sets and that he was great at like the vision, and he was great at coming up with ideas, and he was great at being front facing, and he was great at the interviews and making connections, and I was really good at, going back to what I was saying about what I really, my skill set as an employee was that I was really good at implementing things. So we really complemented each other well in that respect. That, John came up with these huge ideas and he's like, I really want to do this. And then I'd say, okay, let's figure out how we can do this. Let's make this happen. So learning about the podcasting space back in, 2012, podcasting wasn't brand new, but it certainly isn't what it is today. And so I think that we were in a very unique time frame to be learning about podcasting as podcasting was learning about podcasting. There weren't a lot of rules. There weren't a lot of like things already kind of set in stone. And so I think a lot of podcasters that started back in that time frame were really kind of paving the way for like what the podcasting space was going to look like. And of course it's changed a lot now. You have these huge players in the game. So it's no longer, these individuals starting podcasts. I mean, it is that too. But now you have big players making rules and kind of changing things up. It wasn't really like that when we started. So it was a really cool journey to be discovering podcasting as a medium, like writing our own rules in a lot of ways. It was like the Wild West kind of.
Yeah, like you said, not a new industry, but you were definitely on the forefront of creating an industry, and to
Mhm.
see how far it's come since then, I'm sure it's pretty incredible too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on your LinkedIn, you have yourself listed as the heartbeat of EO Fire. How did you come up with that, and what does that mean to you?
You know what? I can't take credit for that. Somebody else actually recommended that I put that because I think before I said that I was the engine of EO Fire, that was kind of what I had listed as my title. And I was interviewing with someone and they said, you can't compare yourself to a machine. You should compare yourself to something, more like heart-centered. And so they said, you should be the heartbeat of Entrepreneurs on Fire. You're like at the center of the business, helping it run. And I just kind of picked it up from that and ran with it from there. So, I mean, for me, it's kind of John has obviously created this business from nothing. And he had this vision for this podcast that was going to inspire millions of people and help people, start their own entrepreneurial journey, grow their businesses, be inspired. There's so much that has gone into building this business. But the communities that we've created, the programs that we've created, the way that we've been able to grow the podcast, I do feel like I've been a huge part of that.
Mhm.
And I felt like heartbeat was a good way to categorize it, I guess.
Yeah, I love the answer too, because when I talk to female entrepreneurs, we're always talking about how we as females are typically heart centered. And so we
Mm,
give so much from the heart. So I love the heartbeat. I feel like that's a great title. And for a woman, it really resonates with me because I understand what that could mean to somebody. So I really
yeah.
like that too.
Uh,
So you guys have moved to Puerto Rico. Talk about how you came about that decision. Because I've heard people move, come back. Why was that the best decision for your family and for your business? And you obviously still live there today. So just kind of give an idea of your mindset through the process.
Yeah, so back in 2015, 2016, the business had really picked up. We were generating a lot of revenue and we were living in California, so we were paying a lot of taxes. For me, I grew up in California. I love California. My family's in California. There wasn't really too many reasons why I would ever want to leave California, to be honest. But John was the one writing the checks to, come tax time, and he was really starting to feel it. And so we started looking at other states in the US that were no tax. And when it came down to it, like we were paying, I think, 13.5% in California. And 13%, it's a big percent, especially when you're talking about, multiple millions of dollars a year in revenue. Um, but to go someplace that we didn't want to go, it didn't really seem, I wasn't willing to not have the lifestyle that we wanted just for 13%.
Right.
So we kind of had like tabled that conversation. And then a friend reached out to John and said, hey man, I've been down in Puerto Rico for a couple of months. Like, I don't know if you've heard about the tax incentives down here, but you should really check it out. I think he had known or heard that we were looking at no tax states. And so he's like, you got to check out Puerto Rico. So that was maybe like around January, February of 2016. And so John dove into it. We got our CPA into it, and we're like, please tell us why this won't work. Tell us why this doesn't exist. Tell us why this isn't the right move for us. And the more we dug into it, we found out that you could move your business to Puerto Rico, become a full time resident, and pay 4% flat tax. And so
Mm,
we thought, okay, wow, 13%, not a huge game changer in terms of what we wanted our lifestyle to look like. 50 plus percent, that's major. That can create financial freedom very quickly. And
mm.
so by May 1st, we were feet on the ground in Puerto Rico with 6 suitcases. We sold all of our stuff
Wow.
and we said, you know what? We're going to go to Puerto Rico. We're going to give this a go. If anytime we feel like it's not the right move for us, like we're not enjoying it, like it's not where we want to be, then we leave. And we've been here for over 8 years.
Yeah. And it's not permanent. I think when people think about it, if you make a decision to move, you can always make a decision to move back. So I would like
Exactly.
some myth busters from you. I've never been to Puerto Rico. And all I really see from our wonderful news outlets is terrible stuff, high crime, food's awful. You can't like buy clothes or furniture. So break through some of those myths for us.
None of that's true. I mean, there's crime everywhere. Yes, there are less desirable areas in Puerto Rico, just like there are less desirable areas in California and New York and Alaska and everywhere, right? So there are areas that you probably wouldn't be hanging out at 8 p.m. at night by yourself, but that's true anywhere. The food situation, there's Costco here. We live 45 minutes from a Costco. We go once a week. That's pretty much where we get all of our groceries. Costco is such a godsend. I love it. And it's a really great source of like all the food that we eat, basically. I, for one, am personally not a fan of Puerto Rican food. And I know a lot of Puerto Ricans that would be really upset to hear me say that because they are very much into their cuisine. Total respect for that. I don't love it. It's a lot of fried food and meats, and I'm kind of more on the vegetable, fresh side of things. But you can find, I mean, we cook a lot of meals at home. It's not like a big deal. We did that anyways back in California. What were the other things that you mentioned that you can't buy clothes and furniture? There's some great furniture stores up in San Juan, beautiful stuff. I mean, we've furnished our home quite easily. I would say the one thing that I can't bust, it is not a myth, it's very true that island time exists. Things take a really long time. So if you're used to things happening quickly, they do not happen quickly here. And convenience. Maybe if you're living in San Juan, the convenience is there. We live in the south east part of the island in a town called Umacao in a community called Miss Del Mar. And we have restaurants here. We've got a mini mart. We're like 15 minutes from a super Walmart. So we have access to a lot of things, but convenience wise, we don't have Uber. There aren't a lot of like, super what for my personal taste I would consider like great restaurants. So the convenience factor is not really there.
Yeah, and you're just a quick flight to, like, Miami, so it's not
Yeah.
like you couldn't go get things if you needed to.
Traveling is very, very easy for sure. It's super easy to get on and off the island.
Yes. So fast forward to today and kind of what your main skill set and role is with EO Fire. What do you do with the company today? Why do you enjoy it? Why is it important?
Well, my role has drastically shifted in the past few months because we just had our first baby.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been a wonderful transition, but definitely as anyone who's a business owner and used to, it's a huge shift for me. So I'm still kind of getting used to that. But my role in the company is very much on the content side of things. I handle our books, all of our financials. I manage our team. So we have two virtual team members, and I kind of head that and community and course content. So managing the communities that we run, creating course content for the courses that we have, and sponsorships, working directly with our sponsors for any of the podcast advertisements. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a behind the scenes person of like all the things that you see without like actually seeing me. And that role stays true, even, with welcoming our baby into the world. But I've very heavily relied on our virtual team to help pick up a lot of my slack recently.
Yeah, and I love seeing the pictures of Bo online, so congratulations. I know my daughter's 20, so it seems like forever ago since the baby phase,
Wow.
but I do remember that first part. You're, like, really confused, not sure what to do, but at the same time loving the journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh,
Yeah.
20. Wow.
Yeah. So one of the things I find very unique about the way that you guys run your business is that you do generate an income report and you're publicly talking about that. I don't know any other podcast that talks about that. So can you tell us like why you guys decided to do that and why you feel it's important?
Yes. So John decided to start doing an income report. He was actually inspired by Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. Back in the day, Pat was also generating a monthly income report. And for John, when he first started the podcast, that was a huge motivator and inspiration for him to be seeing someone who he knew, like, and trusted, um, openly talk about the revenue that they were generating, the money that they were spending, because there's lots of flashy headlines, right? Like, $2 million launch and like with one employee and stuff like that. But when you really start looking behind what actually went down in that launch, like 1.5 million was spent in ads, like 200,000 was spent in consulting. And so like they might have taken home like a couple $100,000. Not a bad launch, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's a lot of like fancy stuff put out without you being able to see how that actually what was able to happen. And we really wanted people to see like we're not just talking about making $200,000 in a month and being able to actually keep that in our pockets. Like, we want to show you how we're doing that. We wanted to be open and transparent about that because it was such a big inspiration for us when we started that we wanted that for our audience as well. So, transparency has always been a really big thing for us. We thought that by putting out every single dollar that we're making and every single dollar that we're spending would really help people understand the different ways that you can generate revenue in your business. We're big fans of obviously diversifying your revenue. As many businesses saw during the pandemic. And even before that, it doesn't have to be a pandemic for you to realize that if you only have one way that you're generating revenue and that way goes away, then you're going to be in big trouble. So, also being able to show the multiple different ways that we have earned revenue. So, I love our income report personally because being the person that is like in the books and the financial side of our business, it has really helped us keep our finger on the pulse. John's very much into the financials of the business as well. He's a finance guy, like that's his background. So I know I speak for him too when I say this. Knowing what's happening with the money in your business is the most important thing that you can do in a business because it's so easy to build up recurring expenses early. And if you're not keeping track of those, they can snowball. And before you know it, you might have a good gross revenue, but your net revenue is probably quite low. For all these expenses that maybe you're just not keeping track of, you don't remember that you signed up for something, and that really adds up. So, doing the income reports really forces us to every single month always be reevaluating how we're spending our money, how we're investing our money, and also the ways that we're generating revenue. Like, if one month we're doing really great with course revenue, and at the end of the month, I'm putting together the report and I see that, then for me, I'm like, okay, what did we do this month different that resulted in that? How can we do it again next month? So it also really helps you keep your finger on the pulse in terms of, okay, how can I double down on what's working? And then if something's really not generating a ton of revenue, maybe it's something that you can cut and that you don't need to spend your time doing.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that if you weren't actually paying attention to the numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I do think it adds credibility to too, because you guys do have a community, you guys do have some products, so you're saying, hey, this is what we're actually doing. And now I'm going to teach you how to do it instead of, someone just saying, oh, I can teach you, but you don't have the credibility piece behind it because they're not willing to show you what they've done.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And quick side note for the audience too, we were talking about this earlier, is we both worked for Union Bank back in the day in California. So I thought that was interesting because I grew up in California as well. So I'm curious to know, working together as a team, what's the vision going forward for you guys? Because you've been in the industry for a while, you kind of have a great pulse to see what's going on in the podcasting industry. Talk about what you guys have discussed as maybe future of EO Fire.
Yeah, I mean, in the last couple of years, as we've become a part of the HubSpot podcast network, we've seen a collaboration like that. That's been really fantastic for us. We've made a lot of really amazing connections with other podcasters because of the network. HubSpot has such a plethora of amazing resources for us as podcasters. They do like monthly trainings where you can learn more about like different types of advertising, different ways to market the podcast. We do podcast interview swaps with other people in the network. So that has been, I think before we became a part of the HubSpot podcast network, we had only heard about networks maybe in a little bit of a negative light that like maybe the network was only in it for themselves and they don't really provide a whole lot to the podcasters that are in it. Of course, that's a generalization. And we learned that after becoming a part of the HubSpot podcast network that networks can be really incredible if you find the right one. So I think collaborations like that and really focusing on giving back what we're getting is really important to us. And that has been a big focus for us. So I think continuing, to see how we can grow these types of partnerships is a focus for us. And, since we came to Puerto Rico, we've kind of been transitioning into much more of like a lifestyle business. And that's been a really incredible journey. There are a lot of places in the business where we're probably leaving a lot on the table because it's more important to us that, especially now with our son, being able to spend time with him and watch him grow up and, be able to take trips and travel. We both love travel so much. So there's a lot in the business that we haven't focused on, but it's been intentional. And I think that that has been a really great lesson for me over the years as well, is that you can build a massive business, you can continue hiring employees and you can continue launching courses and everything. But if that's not what you want for your lifestyle, you're never going to be happy. And the way that we've been able to grow this business and also create the lifestyle that we want has been a really fantastic journey. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah, and that's a great lesson too, because that you're trading your time for that dollar. So do you really need those extra dollars, or are you creating enough in your lifestyle now that makes you happy? Because, if you trade those dollars for the time, you don't get that time back. And you've got
Hmm.
to decide, where that balance looks good for you as well. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I have a final fun question for you.
Okay.
If you could pick a superpower, what would it be and why?
Ooh, superpower. Huh. Okay, I would say, you know what? This is because I love travel so much. I would want power to be that I could speak any language, no matter like wherever I go, that I'd be able to speak that language. I think that would be a really cool addition to traveling and being immersed in different cultures, is actually being able to communicate with people as well would be really awesome.
Yeah, I love that answer. I actually haven't had that, so that's a unique answer. So I appreciate that. Hey, I appreciate your time. I've been a fan of EO Fire for many years, so I'm grateful for you and for John and for kind of paving the way and really teaching us not only podcasting, but teaching us business too. So I just want you to know that I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Received. Thank you so
Yay.
much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Empower Her Money podcast. I am grateful for you. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, like this podcast, share it, subscribe, and let's keep teaching others how to take control and be empowered with their finances.